It's hard to overstate how big of a deal the Goosebumps books were if you were a kid growing up in the 90s or early 2000s. Almost everyone I knew at school was a fan, and the series itself spread through the playground word-of-mouth network of children, which marketing firms will never be able to emulate. The majority of the original books, original being an important word here because there have been a dizzying amount of spin-offs and tie-in series, were published in the mid to late 90s. They were a bit before my time, but I came across them around 3rd grade in the mid-2000s, which I could blame on horribly underfunded and likely corrupt inner-city public school systems, but it's probably just a testament to their longevity. I remember stealing them from my classroom supply of books that weren't meant to leave school to read them at home and then bring them back the next day before my teacher would notice. That said, if you were a Goosebumps fan, the main thing you probably remember is the visuals of the books. Each of the books had a beautiful and colorful oil painting from artist Tim Jacobus, and design-wise they had this really distinct two-tone cover with an instantly recognizable slimy font. The books themselves though, well, let's just say the stories were often carried by the covers. They were slim books, you could typically read them in a couple of hours and each chapter ended on a cliffhanger typically, some of which were ridiculously stupid. Like half the chapters would end with the main character being like, oh my gosh, a monster just jumped in the room and is trying to eat me, but 9 out of 10 times it was just the narrator's little sister in a mask. Some were a lot better than others, but the stories themselves were a bit weak, which makes sense given that RL, or perhaps his ghostwriters, churned out one of these every month for years. Ironically, I don't remember the books being particularly scary outside of a few that I still remember. They were more schlocky and goofy with this very dated Borscht Belt style sense of humor. I read most of them, but again, I think that's mostly because of how promising the covers were, that this book would actually be scary. What was pretty scary was the TV show, which adapted the novels and featured seemingly every Canadian child actor in existence, and some more than once. The show was quite low budget and still silly, but arguably a better piece of media than the book series. It was no Are You Afraid of the Dark, but some episodes were genuinely scary. Scenes from the Piano Lessons Can Be Murder episode, which I watched while I was alone in the house homesick from school, are still burned in my brain. The show is a fun, late 90s time capsule that's probably the perfect thing to watch around Halloween to get that spooky fix if you don't like actual horror movies. Anyways, you know what was even scarier? The Goosebumps game, Attack of the Mutant, released in 1997. The game was produced by DreamWorks and published by Scholastic, whose red, rectangular logo is probably currently giving you flashbacks to school book fairs gone by. This game was an absolute mainstay in the Snuggler household growing up. My brother and I were obsessed with it and played it over and over, but we found it so scary that we'd often have to force my dad to finish the level for us, while we watched while cowering in fear behind him. I remember this game being both incredibly enigmatic and enthralling, but also deeply, deeply scary as a kid. I don't think we ever beat it though. Anyways, for this year's late Halloween special, we are revisiting Goosebumps, Attack of the Mutant. At first, Attack of the Mutant seems like an odd choice to make a game adaptation of. The book had an awesome cover, but I remember it being one of the weirdest and weakest. It's basically about a comic book obsessed kid named Skipper finding out that the world of comic books that he's obsessed with, including the main supervillain, the Masked Mutant, is real and in his town. The fictional villain existing in real life is a cool idea, and Skipper himself infiltrates the mutant's lair, but the story was just kind of confusing and not remotely scary. The 2-part TV adaptation is weird too. It's kind of just boring and faintly sad. The mutant disguises himself as a teenage girl and flirts with the main character, which is honestly pretty weird. But the more you think about it, the comic book themed book really lends itself to being adapted into a game, what with all the action and villains and specific locations. And the game's story doesn't share much of the books besides the characters. So giving Attack of the Mutant a computer game adaptation makes more sense than something more threadbare like Egg Mutants from Mars. The game begins with this incredibly low-resolution full-motion video of our character taking the bus that always used to really unsettle me as a kid. Also, I'll probably say this scared me a lot as a kid, a million times in this video, so bear that in mind. Anyways, while taking the bus, our protagonist flips through pages of a comic book called The Masked Mutant, where you get to meet most of the characters of this game's MCU. There's the Green Gazelle, voiced by Adam West, believe it or not.
Nice work. I'm now back and ready to rumble.
Dinah, the rollerblade heroine.
It's too quiet, and it's been too quiet for days.
Flo, the liminal space water girl, and this guitar guy whose name I never got, but sort of reminds me of the mascot for some early 2000s chewing gum with Attitude brand. We also meet the mutant and his henchmen. More about them later though.
We've got work to do, and the sooner we get started, the sooner the world will be mine!
You might be noticing how absolutely terrifying every character, including the good guys, look. Like the main villain, the Masked Mutant, is the least unsettling of the bunch. Anyways, eventually we get to the end of the line and the bus driver very unceremoniously kicks us off the bus.
Kid! End of the line!
Seems a bit irresponsible to force a small child into a desolate wasteland part of the city where it looks like copper wire strippers and catalytic converter thieves would be a bit nervous to walk through at night, but that's probably pretty par for the course of a city bus driver's moral code. Anyways, from here the game switches from FMV to the actual game's graphics. Now, you might think that a Goosebumps video game from the late 90s would be a child-friendly point-and-click adventure game, but no. Attack of the Mutant is basically a boomer shooter. Just look how fast the character moves. Gameplay-wise, it's mostly exploration and solving fairly simple puzzles interspersed with combat sections and brief boss fights. Anyways, from the get-go for a game produced by Scholastic, Attack of the Mutant honestly looks super impressive. Like, don't get me wrong, this is definitely behind the times graphically for 1997, but for a game you could dismiss as shovelware, there's a definite vibe going on here. One of my favorite things from the book and its cover was this crazy pink and green evil villain headquarters, and I think the game does a great job in bringing it to life. I don't really know how to describe it, but the game is in a 3D environment while featuring 2D sprite renderings that become 3D in cutscenes. I'm sure there's a word for that type of graphical design, but I don't know it. It looks and plays a bit like a much less violent Hexen or those early Bungie games like Pathways into Darkness or Marathon. The visual look of the game is super cohesive and nostalgic too, featuring this 90s Goosebumps color palette. Lots of deep purples and bright yellows, midnight blues, and toxic waste greens. Once you get into the mutant's lair, the rollerblade hero Dinah tells you that the mutant is plotting something. Just don't look too much at her lips and cheeks while she's talking.
We suspect he's trying to take over the world. Your world. And my friends and I want to prevent that. But we'll definitely need your help. Come on, we should get out of here. That could be the mutant now.
Remember when I said every character in this game looks scary? You take the elevator up, and after squashing this armored bug monster, you find the mutant's office. You spy on the meeting with the other supervillains and meet this game's rogues gallery. There's the mutant, of course, voiced by Jim Belushi, believe it or not, who's your pretty self-explanatory evil villain who wants to take over the world and can turn into a panther at will.
An unknown intruder from the outside world has slipped inside our headquarters, and he or she has to be apprehended at once!
Then Root Rot, this unsettling plant guy who's one of the mutant's lieutenants.
Haha, don't worry, mutant. If I had to, I could mow them all down myself.
I was talking to my brother in preparation for this video, and he tells me that Root Rot was the one that used to scare him the most, to the point where he would have nightmares about him. For me, though, the worst was Pinky Flamingo.
If any of those losers show up, it's gonna be me who gets to rub them out.
I found him terrifying. Not least because I don't really get his character design. He has this Rat Pack, lounge lizard vibe, but with this spiky mohawk and with erasers for fingers on one hand and dental tools on the other. His weird design paired with his voice and giant white piano key teeth was pure nightmare fuel. Also, somebody on the My Abandonware page for this game said they had a crush on him as a kid, which makes him even scarier. And then Molecule Man, who is pretty unremarkable besides looking like he's made of tortilla chips and apparently being on thin ice with a mutant after defying his orders one too many times.
Do I have your word?
Do I have your loyalty?
Only time will tell.
Once the meeting breaks up, you explore the room, but the mutant starts chasing you around and punching you, which admittedly is a weird choice for the game's arch-villain to start beating the absolute dog water out of the main characters in the first couple minutes. Anyways, you escape by jumping into a painting that brings you to Root Rot's greenhouse world. You get a rake as your main weapon and stop Root Rot by unleashing some murder hornets on him. There's something about his screams of pain playing on repeat and giant bugged out eyes in this animation that always creeps me out. Once you escape, you're kind of on your own to explore the mutant's lair, traveling in between floors on the building's elevator, which honestly has a very charming design with a nice little jingle. Despite how goofy the game is, there's some genuine moments of great atmosphere, like this eerie hallway with a leaking pipe. Or this part where you're on this metal pathway in the mutant's lair that's also somehow floating in outer space, with a view of the Earth and the moon in the distance. It has this inexplicable, sinister feeling to it that, though much weakened with the years, I still appreciated. Anyways, after your fight with Root Rot, you soon run into Pinky Flamingo, who traps you in his lair, erasing the doors with his eraser hands and dropping you into a pit of quicksand before teleporting, I guess?
We might as well toast your untimely end, kid. He has mud in the eye.
It's not clear what his powers are, but he can seemingly break the laws of space at will. Also, every time I hear someone say, "Here's mud in your eye," which is admittedly not that often, I think of Pinky. If you remember anything about this game, chances are you remember the theme in Pinky's office. It's iconic. Anyways, you escape the sand pit by grabbing onto a rat, which drives you to safety. This is pretty damn impressive because, at least in the TV show, the main character is a fairly husky kid. Maybe the mutant's plan is starting his rats on trend cycles. Once you're free, you travel from floor to floor in the lair, and there's more shenanigans. Like this puzzle where the galloping gazelle is trapped in a canvas and you have to use green slime to paint him to freedom, which is admittedly kind of a cool idea. Afterwards, he gets into this super epic battle with a mutant in panther form, and is saved by the tortilla chip Molecule Man, who is revealed to be a turncoat on the side of the good guys.
You dare to interfere!
There's this other moment where you find yourself in the void of space, and this superhero who kind of looks like Bible Man saves you. But oh no, he's a mutant in disguise, and he banishes you to this ice world led by the supervillainess Chinchilla, whose vibe is also super hard to figure out. Like, she's kind of got this Umbridge mixed with Cruella de Vil type thing, but she also has garden hoses for hands that shoot out ice lasers. The devs on this game were nothing if not creative with character design. She takes you to this ice level, and oh my god, is the platforming section here frustrating. I wasted so much time trying to get through this, especially because the monsters you kill respawn immediately. I have no clue how a child is supposed to get past this. Like, the game up to this point is basically just running around, occasional combat sections with a gun or the rake, and trying to get these hidden costume parts. Despite the controls being super wonky and antiquated, none of the gameplay felt inherently bad, but this section is just torturous. Anyways, you're paid off with this pretty fun boss fight against Chinchilla, where you deflect snowballs with a hockey stick until the Jumbotron falls on her. After that, you run into Flo, the water hero, who's basically one of those liquid energy beings from the Capri Sun commercial, but with a disembodied human face stitched on. Before you can get better acquainted, Pinky ambushes you.
Yeah, just itching to rub you out.
You want to rub her out, Pinky? I don't think she'd be into that. Oh, okay, maybe she would, my mistake. Anyways, you eventually go into this jungle temple level where all these toad people are slaves to a two-headed ogre guy named Warlock, who's making them carry around, I don't know, limes, I think?
It was an accident.
Oops.
That was an accident too.
This is one of the coolest looking levels, but all there is to it is to shoot the ogre guy into the water with the slime gun and free the toads from their bondage. They're pretty happy about this. At least I think they're happy. This is supposed to be happiness, right? I realize at this point I'm sort of just saying this happened, then this happened, then this happened, like a little kid trying to recap a movie he just saw, but that is literally what the game feels like. The events are basically inexplicable, and it just feels like some unknowable, cruel deity is just toying with you by dropping you into strange situation after strange situation with no rhyme or reason. Like, there's this part where you're in the vent with the rats, and then this part where you have a gun and are shooting robots, and then this part where everything is green, but it's not clear where it's all adding up to, and I don't think it's supposed to. There's so many weird, unexplained moments that you just have to take on the chin.
7th floor. Art studio, storage closet, treats and surprises. And never forget, Pally, it's a jungle out there.
The main story thread is that the mutant wants to use this giant green laser beam to do bad stuff, and the heroes want to stop him. You show up to another meeting of the League of Good Guys, where it's revealed that the tortilla chip molecule man has in fact switched sides and wants to overthrow the mutant.
At least you know I can be trusted, unlike some people.
You know, you and the mutant have always seemed like way bonded.
Yes, but things have changed. Now I want to see him stopped.
Anyways, after that, you have a final showdown with Pinky Flamingo, where you kill him by spraying a hose in his mouth until he inflates and explodes. This death really scared me as a kid, but now as an adult I realize it's probably just somebody's fetish.
Oh no! I'm inexplicably inflated again!
Maybe this is why that one person had a crush on him. Next on your kill list is Root Rot, who you prod with a rake until he gets sucked into an industrial fan, with a very gruesome death cutscene. Man, this game is as fucked up as I remember. You save the rock and roll bubblegum hair guy, and I don't know why as a kid I really liked this line delivery.
If the conversion gets done, man, Mutant wins!
Oh. 2 minutes.
When I was playing the game for this video, I got really excited at this point because from here on out is uncharted territory. My brother and I never got this far, and if we did, I don't remember it. You scale a tower and avoid jumping spider things. At the top is a horde of monsters for you to kill, and this puzzle where you have to guess who the real Dinah is.
Use these. They'll work in your paintball blaster. Wait! She's not the real Dinah. I am. No, take my earrings and blaster. Not me. Her!
And I do mean guess, because I'm pretty sure it's a complete 50-50 that changes each time on which will kill you and which will give you an upgrade for your gun. It's like the twin brothers guarding two doors riddle, but fashioned by an uncaring and senile god. From there, you have your final showdown with the mutant, who's in a tank shooting lasers at you. Final boss is this really easy but boring encounter where you just have to dodge the laser beams while aiming at this cow picture on a giant rotating vat of green juice behind the mutant. Because I guess that's a thing that makes total sense. Once you blow open the vat, his green juice causes the mutant to implode, I guess?
Look what you've gone and done!
Maybe I should have been paying attention to the newscast about the mutant's plan. Anyways, in the ending cutscenes, the other heroes celebrate your victory, and if you found all the missable parts of the costume by exploring, they allow you to join the League as a new superhero.
You saved the whole town!
Not to mention the entire world. For this, we are more than happy to make you an honorary member of the League of Good Guys.
a very kid-friendly ending, especially when you remember how the original Attack of the Mutant book ending. In the book, the main character goes back home after defeating the mutant, but when he accidentally cuts himself, he bleeds out comic book ink, which is really unsettling and I guess signifies that he's now forever trapped as a comic book character himself. The TV show ends with the protagonist Skipper tricking the mutant into turning into a puddle of acid, and then revealing that after his ordeal, he now has super stretch powers. He also does his extended supervillain laugh at the end for no real reason. On surface level, the game ending seems a lot more happy and brainless until you realize, wait, does this mean our character is now trapped in the comic book world forever? Because at the beginning, the FMV section on the bus wasn't animated. Are we now stuck forever in a dimension of uncanny flesh puppet people and 2D sprites forced into a 3D world, never to return to the world we once knew? Was this all a hallucination or dying mind manufactured in our final moments, bleeding out after stepping on an infected, discarded syringe in the sketchy part of town that the bus driver forced us off in? The more you think about it, the ending gets less and less reassuring. After a decade and a half, I was expecting this game to be much worse than I remembered. And in a way, it definitely was much more threadbare than I thought it was. I remember so much more gameplay and boss fight mechanics, and the whole game barely lasted over an hour. But I can chalk that up to the sense of amazement and wonder of a young boy's mind, or perhaps just being a really dumb kid who sucked at video games and thought that opening a window to let in hornets was peak boss design. But honestly, I do think this game really pulled its weight for a book TV show hybrid tie-in from '96. The devs definitely had a thing or two cooking. With the sometimes incredible atmosphere of the mutant's lair, simple but fun puzzles, and perhaps unintentionally terrifying character design. Plus, the story of Molecule Man's redemption from evil to good against all odds is one of the most impactful and affecting in all of gaming, or perhaps fiction history.
I'll do the only thing I can do. I'll give you my word.
This is probably the first game I ever played that could be labeled a horror game of some sort, so I'll blame it for infecting me with the brain parasites that led me to the timeline I'm currently in of being a horror game YouTuber. If you played the Goosebumps games, what are some of your memories of it? Or what are some kid-oriented pieces of media that you found unsettling and scary that left a deep mark on you? I'm not engagement farming, I'm genuinely curious. Also, this whole video is sort of a tribute to my older brother. Almost all my best gaming memories from my childhood I shared with him, whether it was playing this game together, unwrapping our N64 on Christmas Day, trying and failing to unlock the Master Hand as a character in Super Smash Bros. Melee, or running me through Deadmines and Stalks over and over in Vanilla WoW. I feel like since I've started this strange side career as a YouTuber, he's been my biggest fan and supporter, which really means so much to me because he was the person who got me into video games in the first place. So this video is for him. Also, I just read that back and realized that it sounds like I'm making this as a tribute to his memory, but he's still very much alive and well. At least last time I checked. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you so much for your time, dear viewer. I wish you all the good fortune in the world. I remain your faithful snuggler.